Once upon a time, in a faraway age, there existed a kingdom known as Agna. It stood as one of the most opulent, enchanting, and joyous realms in all the world. The kingdom was composed of several bustling cities and 20 charming villages. Yet, beneath the surface of the kingdom of Agna lay a grand secret, one known only to the king, a handful of trusted advisors, and the villagers of a hamlet named Lear. Lear village was much like its neighboring villages, but within its vicinity resided the source of the entire kingdom's immense wealth. It was a forest, seemingly ordinary and indistinguishable at first glance from any other woodland. But, oh, it was extraordinary. The forest beside Lear was a singular wonder, a forest imbued with enchantment. Within its depths lay bountiful treasures of food, fruits, mushrooms, varied berries, herbs, and a garden flourishing with every kind of plant. To unlock its magic, only those with pure hearts could tread its paths. When a soul of purity plucked something from this woodland, the very next morning, upon the same plant, in the same spot, threefold more fruits would appear than what was gathered the day before. The enchantment of the forest near Lear was ancient, spanning eons beyond memory, initiating with each early spring and waning only at the first fall of snow. Though the magical forest was small, no larger than 2 villages, it provided sustenance for all the souls in the kingdom of Agna, affording each a free and sweet feast. Yet, on one autumnal day, as fruits were being plucked from the trees, strange and sinister occurrences began to unravel within the magical forest. Those with the purest hearts who ventured through the wood to collect its bounty would return home, only to fall into an eternal slumber from which they'd never awaken. It took the villagers of Lear 3 days to realize that a profound change had befallen the forest. An evil, a malevolent force, had tainted its heart. Those with pure hearts were no longer welcome, and as a result, none dared tread the forest's paths. By the 5th day, the villagers convened at the heart of the hamlet, their decision unanimous to seek aid from their king. It was agreed, at all costs, that none would enter the forest until the king made his ruling. The villagers chose Nicola, the village teacher and dear confidant of the benevolent King Ian, to journey to the palace, bearing the grievous news and seeking guidance and remedy. Nicola readied his steed and embarked toward the palace, his arrival coinciding with the gentle descent of dusk. As he approached the grand gates, a sentinel emerged, welcomed Nicola, and led him to the chambers of royalty. Seated upon the regal throne was King Ian, his thoughts lost in the horizon. He stood tall, 40 years etched upon his form, his beard a curtain of black, his eyes as deep and azure as the sea. "My king," the sentinel interrupted King Ian's reverie. "Yes?" the king inquired. "There's a visitor," the sentinel informed. "Let them enter," the king replied. Nicola entered, bowed before the king, and asked for a word. "Proceed, teacher Nicola," King Ian spoke, a smile playing upon his face. Nicola began to explain the dire situation that had arisen. King Ian, initially engrossed, listened carefully, but as the tale unfolded, his smile faded, replaced by a grave and troubled countenance. He summoned his advisor, Mark. As Mark learned of the dire circumstances, he recommended that a troop be dispatched into the forest for protection. King Ian contemplated for a while before letting out a deep sigh and spoke. "Yes, We shall send a contingent into the forest to ascertain the situation. I believe that is the wisest course of action, Your Highness, Advisor Mark replied. Let Vasili go, King Ian decreed. I understand, Your Highness. Advisor Mark responded and went to the room where the best royal soldiers congregated, seeking out General Vasili. Vasili was the right hand of the king, a man of elder years, not overly tall, with silver hair, a mustache, and green eyes. Vasili, side by side with the King Ian, had fought numerous battles for the kingdom of Agna. Despite his age, he still surpassed any young soldier in his martial prowess. Briefly, Advisor Mark explained Vasili's mission on the king's behalf and ordered him to choose 2 more of the finest warriors, who would stand guard in the magical forest. At dawn's first light, Vasili and the chosen soldiers prepared for their journey. They donned the regal attire, armed themselves, mounted swift and splendid steeds, and set forth towards Lyre village. After a few hours' ride, they reached the village. Even before resting, the villagers gathered, their spirits lifted that King Ian had promptly dispatched aid. Within an hour of their arrival, Vasili and the soldiers readied themselves and embarked courageously towards the forest. They ventured, treaded, examined every nook and cranny, ensuring nothing was concealed, not beneath trees nor beneath stones. However, nowhere did they discern anything peculiar. The forest teemed with woodland creatures: squirrels, hedgehogs, foxes, a few butterflies, ants, flies, and mosquitoes. Yet, the grave and malevolent danger was absent. Birds chirped, the forest bore fruits of various kinds, but nothing was out of the ordinary. They roamed, they searched, and they reached the edge of the forest, then cautiously retraced their steps back to the village. Upon their return to the village, daylight still prevailed, allowing them time to reach the royal palace before the night entirely enveloped the kingdom of Agna. They swiftly mounted their horses and galloped towards the royal palace. As the sun was setting, General Vasili, together with his soldiers, arrived at the palace and strode into King Ian's chambers. "My king," Vasili spoke. "Yes, Vasili," King Ian addressed his finest soldier. "My king, we encountered no peril in the forest. The woodland remains unchanged, much like any other. We searched high and low, yet nothing peculiar came to light. If you command, we will venture once more and scour the entire forest," Vasili reported. King Ian mused, propping his chin upon his palm and turning his gaze toward his beautiful queen, Eva, who sat beside him. After a brief contemplation, he uttered, "Precisely, Vasili. Tomorrow morning, early as can be, head out again. Whenever it may be, whatever it may be, the miracle shall have no choice but to reveal itself." "I understand, Your Highness," Vasili replied, and he, along with his soldiers, withdrew to the barracks to rest from their long and arduous day. The following morning, King Ian, who habitually rise before the sun and savored his mead, summoned his loyal subjects. "Where are the soldiers meant to go into the forest? Is no one awake? Must the king himself rise and wake them?" the king jestingly remarked. He was often the first to awaken, even before the roosters crowed, in the royal palace. The royal servants scurried to the soldiers' chambers and quickly returned, pale and alarmed. "What's the matter? Where are the soldiers? Where is Vasili?" King Ian inquired. "They're dead, Your Majesty. All 3 are dead," one of the servants cried out. "Even Vasili," King Ian exclaimed. Even Vasili. The subject replied. Ian leapt from his throne and hurried into Vasili's chamber, needing to see with his own eyes his finest soldier lying motionless on the bed. Vasili was quiet, yet he still breathed, submerged in an unawakenable slumber. A shiver ran down the king's spine, his strength shook. Even though he stood rooted, he realized that the three best soldiers lay helpless, untouched by any enemy. In the village, King Ian swiftly dispatched other soldiers to prevent the villagers from approaching, staying at least 300 paces away from the cursed forest. And so, the forest was deemed cursed. Yet, the King Ian couldn't accept the state of affairs within the forest. Since the entire kingdom depended on its magic, he resolved to offer great wealth to anyone who could uncover what was causing the people to fall into sleep and lift the curse that had befallen the forest. Years passed, and people of all sorts came forward by the hundreds. Sorcerers, witches, warlocks, seers, soothsayers, and more, all attempting to lift the curse and claim the promised wealth. However, they all met the same fate, sinking into deep, eternal slumber. The villagers continued to live in this manner for years and years, but because no one dared enter the forest, they became impoverished, and the entire kingdom of Agna suffered as well. And while the king sought salvation, even as the years passed and the seasons turned, a boy named Franz was born and grew up in the village. At the age of 16, Franz stood tall and slender, with russet hair and eyes as green as emeralds. From his earliest memories, he knew that the forest was cursed, that no one should step foot within it. He was incredibly bright, devouring every book and scrap of knowledge he could find. Franz's family lived in poverty, so he often went to the stream to catch fish to sustain them. These were tough and lean times for the kingdom of Agna, where any form of sustenance was sought after and welcome. If he managed to catch extra fish or frogs, Franz would hasten to the market to sell them, using the proceeds to buy other food for his family. One day, while Franz was fishing by the stream, he saw numerous frogs emerging from the water, hopping towards the cursed forest. Excited, he thought that if he could capture them all and sell them at the market, he could earn a substantial amount to provide for his family for months. He jumped up, grabbed a woven basket, and began to catch the frogs that headed towards the forest. He snatched frogs one by one, but they leapt out of the basket, climbing onto his hands, shoulders, and head. Delighted, with a smile on his face, Franz filled the basket, only to suddenly realize that he was on the other side of the stream, deep within the forest. Frightened and carrying the frog-filled basket, he quickly returned to the stream's edge. Fearful for his life, Franz resisted sleep, reading books to stay awake and avoid falling into eternal slumber. But his eyelids grew heavy, and he fell asleep in the late night hours. To his amazement, he woke up the next morning, still alive. And not just for a day, but many days, even weeks. However, something gnawed at him. It had been 3 weeks since his adventure in the forest, and he hadn't seen or caught any frogs or creatures in the stream since. He pondered, wondered, and remembered. At the top of his small bookshelf was the green book where he had read about an illness similar to theirs. He rushed to retrieve the book and began reading. The disease carried by the frogs was spread by mosquitoes, and what creature feeds on mosquitoes if not frogs, the very ones that climbed on him when he entered the forest? The book also revealed that to eliminate mosquitoes, animals, frogs, or bats were to be brought to their breeding grounds, so as to catch every last mosquito. Overwhelmed with excitement, Franz couldn't sleep all night. The next morning, he borrowed his father's donkey, packed some food and water, and set off for the royal palace, hoping to speak with King Ian. Standing before the palace gates, he introduced himself, shared his story, and requested an audience with the king, explaining that he held a solution to the kingdom's greatest problem. King Ian promptly received him and listened to his tale. Franz described how he had entered the forest by accident a few weeks prior and emerged unharmed. He produced the green book from his bag, opened it, and showed the manuscript detailing the forest's malady. "You're a young and clever lad," said King Ian, "and that's why I'll listen to you. I'll do whatever it takes to save the forest and, consequently, the entire kingdom. Yet, someone will need to venture into the forest afterwards to prove that it is safe once more. Your Majesty, I will enter the forest for 6 consecutive days. If I survive those 6 days, on the 7th day, I will come to you to demonstrate with my presence that the forest is safe," Franz declared. "So be it," responded King Ian, instructing his servants to spread the word that he required bats and frogs from all over the kingdom. Three days later, thousands of birds and frogs were released into the forest, and, in a heartbeat, not a single mosquito or bug remained. Flocks of birds left the forest, and frogs hopped back to the streams. From then on, for 6 days, Franz entered and exited the forest, always accompanied by royal servants. On the 7th day, he appeared before King Ian, ready to prove that the forest was safe. King Ian was overjoyed to see the young man again. "Bravo!" the king exclaimed. "You are our hero and savior." The king embraced Franz and rewarded him with immense wealth as promised. However, that wasn't all. King Ian knighted Franz, appointed him as his advisor and right-hand man, thereby restoring the kingdom of Ogna to its former glory, one of the most beautiful and prosperous kingdoms in the world.